Hi, everybody. This is Casey with Aligned Astrology. Thanks for being here again. Today, we're talking about the full moon in Aquarius, and we're going to focus on the Mars Saturn opposition because this is one of the most prominent aspects transiting while this full moon in Aquarius is culminating. When we think about the full moon in Aquarius, is a time of letting go. We can see Aquarius as the most mature air sign of the zodiac. Aquarius likes to connect with communities. It likes to be a part of the status quo, wants to express itself and be received, but also have something to share with the community and be able to receive from the community it's a part of. When we look at a full moon, it's a time of culmination, but it can be considered as a time of letting go of something so we can receive something new or something more beneficial for our experience to come. The interesting part about the opposition between Saturn and Mars, which can be considered a very challenging aspect, because these two malefics, the greater malefic Saturn and the lesser malefic Mars, are coming into an opposition, which carries the energy of Saturn, a very challenging energy. But when we look at oppositions and squares, these more difficult aspects, we can think about it like pressure producing diamonds. When we can overcome these aspects or learn from these aspects, we can achieve great things. We can learn more about ourselves. And in this case, it's going to be through relationship. It's going to be through connections. Anytime we look at the rulership of the full moon, the sign that it's in, or the planet that it's ruled by, we can start to delineate and understand what this full moon is trying to express in our own personal experiences. Aquarius, a sign of communication and connection with the community, the acquaintances that it surrounds itself with. In a full moon is like letting go of possibly a community or letting go of a way of being in a community to enter into a more authentic self-expression. So that way the community can either change or accept you for who you are. When we talk about Saturn and Mars and the signs that they're currently in, for example, Mars in the sign of Libra, is not necessarily in a place that it wants to be. It's as far away from Aries as it can be. It's in total opposition from its home. So when we think about Mars and a Venusian ruled sign such as Venus or such as Libra, a Venusian ruled sign such as Libra, we can begin to understand how Mars is going to operate. Any planet in a particular sign is taking on the characteristics of that sign. So Mars is seeing through that Venus lens of Libra. Mars is still Mars, though, and Mars wants to take action. Mars doesn't really like to think. It's aggressive, it's expressive, it's going to get what it needs first. So Mars is going to still get what Mars needs. But Mars is taking on this Venusian lens. It's caring about relationship connection, the connections that it has, and how it's seen through the eyes of other people, just like Libra. So when we look at Mars in this case, Mars is valuing the relationship connection, but it's also considering itself first, even if it's unconscious. So Mars may be taking action in relationships and connections with the other, whether it's your spouse, your business partner, your family, wherever this transit is moving through your zodiac. It's going to be different for all of us depending on our rising signs. But this Mars is still interested in achieving something, getting what it needs in a relationship. And it may paint a picture like it's doing it for the other person. I'm doing this for you in our relationship so we can be better. But inherently, it may be something that Mars genuinely wants and might not have yet considered the other and what they really need. So this full moon is a time of shining light into that expression. Do we need to transform ourselves into a more authentic expression so we can then learn through the lenses of others, because this is all about our relationships here, the lenses of others around us, so we can see ourselves and how we really need to be. When we take a look at Saturn in the sign of Aries, it is taking on the characteristics of Aries. It's looking through the Martian lens of action, of it can be anger, it can be aggression, it can be starting something new or being a trailblazer. But Saturn is still Saturn. Saturn is a very slow moving planet. It is the planet of limitations. It is the planet of boundaries, but it is also the planet that likes to find experience through comprehension. So that means Saturn doesn't want to move fast. Saturn wants to take a moment to analyze the things that are in front of it so Saturn can truly understand what's going on. But it's quite difficult to do that in the sign of Aries. Good thing Saturn's currently retrograde, which brings a time of rethinking. So this opposition between Saturn and Mars is giving us an opportunity to rethink things, to take a look at our relationships and begin to see ourselves through the eyes of the other. So this it's not a surprise that we get this Mars Saturn opposition in these two signs, Aries and Libra, which can be considered as the relationship axis. If we wanted to look at Aries in the first house as a rising sign, first house being the self, seventh house, Libra being the relationship. So when we think about especially these air signs, which are all about communication, all about connection and relationship, having the full moon in an air sign, we can simply look and see that maybe this full moon is about my relationships and how I connect with them. So we'll look at the 12 zodiac signs and see how this opposition, this full moon is showing itself in pertinence to our own particular lives. We can think about conversations in regards to this full moon around unlearning emotional repression, letting go of old ways of being and finding the safe place in our own experience so we can authentically express ourselves, letting go of any mechanical expressions. That Mars through Libra, once again, will consider relationships, but will always consider itself. So having the opposition from that Saturn in Aries is helping us to slow down and see these different things so we can move forward in our relationships and connections. So let's look through the 12 zodiac signs and see how this is going to show up for us. We'll pull the chart up. And it is very interesting to also take note that we have Mercury retrograde in the sign of Leo, which is in opposition to Aquarius. So that Mercury retrograde is right where it needs to be. It's going to be stationing direct in a few days. If you're watching this, you're probably watching it on the day of the direct stationing, which is August 11th. So when that Mercury stations a direct, we will have an idea, more clarity around how we're going to want to communicate the connections that we're going to be a part of, what we're seen for. Because when we think about that sign of Leo, Leo is the star of the show. Leo is the domicile or the home of the sun. It cannot be missed. You see it. So when Mercury is here, our communication, our mind is going to be able to be expressed accordingly for those around us to be seen. So maybe we'll touch on that just a little bit as we move through these zodiac signs. So let me get that chart up and we'll adjust it to the proper timing. We're going to take a look at Aries risings first. So we'll get it there. So when we begin with Aries risings will have the opportunity to experience the full moon in Aquarius in the 11th house. The 11th house is correlated with community, good fortune, It's the acquaintances we find ourselves connected with. When we work in Saturn, which is the ruler of Aquarius, we can notice that Saturn is learning the self through the eyes of others. In opposition with Mars in the seventh house, we are taking action towards those relationships. So we want to understand how we're being seen through the eyes of others, through our expression. And just to surely speak about Mercury, which will be stationing direct August 11th, we'll have a lot more clarity around what we're going to share with our communities. When we think about the fifth house of creativity, of entertainment, especially with Mercury moving through this sign along with the sun, our ideals are wrapped around something that we're creating, something that we may be sharing with a community. So being mindful of that push and pull, that give and take from ourselves to the other is what we really need to be focusing on. A time of letting go of something about ourselves so we can be more courteous, be more aware of what we need to share in our relationships that can then indeed benefit us and the people around us. So if you're an Aries rising, be mindful of the relationships, the connections that you have right now. Move to Taurus risings, we'll experience this full moon in the 10th house of career and public role. Aquarius in the 10th house can show that we may be expressing ourselves to the community in a new way, maybe a revolutionary way. When we think about Saturn in the 12th house, which is its planetary joy, Saturn in the 12th house can be seen as a place of exile, a place of solitude for oneself. So our mind, because the 12th house also is correlated with the subconscious mind, we can begin to think and find clarity around what's been holding us back from being able to share. How are we expressing ourselves in our daily consistent work and our efforts towards making relationships better, towards being understood in a different way in our connections through our communication? And it speaks simply about that. Mercury, which is stationing direct on August 11th, we'll begin to notice how we are communicating. What have we done to be still and notice the truth of our expression? Maybe through connecting with our home, our place of solitude, or having conversations with our family. Then we begin to learn what really matters to us and how we really want to share ourselves with the world, through our public role, through our career. So if you're a Taurus rising going through this with this Mars and Saturn opposition through the 6th house, 12th house axis, notice what you're doing on a daily basis. Understand your consistent daily work and be mindful of the insights that are coming to you that you may want to share with your public world, what everybody sees about you. Notice what you're going to want to share. Looking into Gemini risings, who will be experiencing the full moon Aquarius through the 9th house. The 9th house is the house of higher learning, of long distance travel, whether we go to college and learn more about religion or just our own initiatives that lead us down the path of what can be considered a personal enlightenment, whatever, and what considers to be whatever direction we may be going in. The 9th house allows us to take a step back so we can learn more, so we can then begin to share and express ourselves in a new way. That Saturn opposition with Mars through the 11th house, 5th house axis is taking the opportunity for us to focus more on what can seem like our romantic life when we think about the 5th house or our creative action. But this 5th house Libra is all about relationships. So it may pertain to the connections that you have and how you may be expressing yourself with your acquaintances, with the groups that you're a part of, because that Saturn in Aries is showing us where our limitations are, where our boundaries are that are stopping us from moving forward. And I feel like it's also important to mention that when we think about mutual receptions, we usually talk about domiciles, the home signs, but we can use exaltations as well. When we think about Mars in the sign of Libra, it's as far away from as its home as it can be, which is Aries. We have Saturn in the sign of Aries, which is as far away from its exaltation that it can be. Saturn is currently fallen, it's exalted in Libra. So these two planets are in opposing houses, but they are also in one another's houses of praise, exaltation, or their home domicile. So they are in one another's houses of benefit. So they have a connection and they understand these houses. So their communication is of great benefit. So maybe an acquaintance could have a conversation with you to bring clarity to your experience around creativity, which you're going to want to share with the community that you're becoming a part of. So remember, this is all around what you're learning, what you have to let go of in order to share something new about yourself or share something that you may have not been aware of for a while. For Taurus Rising or Gemini Rising, Gemini Rising. We're going to move forward to Cancers. Cancers who will experience this full moon in Aquarius in the eighth house, the esteem of others. Oh, the esteem of others, and it's also considered as the blood bank. My teacher Adam likes to call it the blood bank. You go to outside places to receive, whether it's financially, emotionally, connection wise. When we look at this full moon here, it's the time of letting go of probably karmic cycles, as this is the house of karma. We can take into consideration the 10th house, fourth house axis where Saturn and Mars are in opposition. And we can begin to understand the importance of our own place of solitude, our family. What connections do we have at home that are giving us clarity on a direction that we need to go in when it comes to career and public role? Where are our boundaries and limitations stopping us from going right now? And how can our communication with our family or our spouse at home bring clarity to the direction that we're going to move in? You know, these challenging experiences with oppositions allow for us to overcome things that we've been facing and dealing with. And when we think about that Mercury stationing direct in your second house of skills, talents, and abilities, it may be something that you're learning to share about yourself that you're not too confident in yet. And a communication, or not a communication, but a conversation can help you to see these things about yourself, to have more confidence in your skills, your talents, and abilities, to share them with the world. Cancer Risings, let us know in the comments how it might be showing up for you. When we look into Leo risings, Leo's experiencing this full moon in the seventh house. So it's one-on-one relationship connections, bosses, spouse. So Aquarius is all about connection and relationships. Aquarius loves to be connected, wants to be liked for being itself. So when we think about the seventh house, it's being liked by our one-on-one relationships, being seen as ourselves as Leo rising. So when we think about incorporating the opposition between Saturn and Mars, Saturn and rulership over this full moon in the ninth house of higher learning, things that we've chose to learn that we want to build upon, to cultivate values and virtues to be able to share with the people around us in our daily waking life, we can begin to see what it takes to share these things with the people that we see on a daily basis, whether it's the people we work with, the neighbors that we might see, our siblings, and what boundaries, what ways of being through learning these new things, need to change? How do we synthesize this expression in a more palatable way for the people around us to receive? And this is going to come through connection with our one-on-one relationships, being more mindful of how we express ourselves in these places so we can see ourselves through these mirrors. That Mercury stationing direct in the first house is going to put us in the right direction to communicate and share ourselves personally with our relationships, our partners, so that way we can begin to really benefit from things that we've learned and benefit those around us. For Leo risings, we'll move forward and see what Virgo risings are looking at. Virgos will experience this full moon in the sixth house of work, health, service, your daily efforts to achieve a particular goal. So that sixth house, which is ruled right now by Saturn, which is moving through the eighth house of karma or karmic debts, in opposition with Mars right now through our skills, talents, and abilities, right? Our second house of financial well-being. Second house, eighth house is our financial axis, right? Whether it's our material values or simply how we're seen. And when we think about connections, when we think about relationships, usually what we're seen for, how we operate, how we express ourselves. And just to shortly talk about Mercury stationing direct in the 12th house is going to bring more clarity to our mind, how we communicate. So this is going to be wrapped around what efforts we're taking daily to share ourselves, to be seen in our relationships in a way that can be beneficial to our connections, allowing ourselves to be emotionally open and connected with the people around us. When we think about the moon correlated with our emotions, it can be correlated with our mind, our body. It's usually our internal world, right? So it's our emotional expression in our daily works and efforts. How are we sharing ourselves now with the people around us? What is it that we need to offer more? And what is it that we need to let go of? When we think about the 12th house, that place of solitude, when we think about having the sun here, a lot of things are coming into our awareness, coming to light about ourselves that we have the opportunity to see. And we are the ones, the only ones who can determine whether or not we want to remain in the way that we have found ourselves to be. So notice what this full moon is going to show us for Virgo risings. Moving to Libra risings, who will experience the full moon in Aquarius in the fifth house of creativity, of romance, of entertainment, the things that we create to begin to share with the public world. It's a time of letting something go, letting go of what we thought we wanted to be and share and create so we can offer ourselves in a more authentic way. The axis of the first house, seventh house, where Saturn is opposing Mars, it's helping us to see what actions we need to take in our own personal experience. Have we been putting ourselves on a back burner to help and make sure everybody else is getting what they need? So when we think about Mars moving through the first house in Libra, it's going to be important for us to be mindful of how we are considering ourselves. Because like I said earlier in this video, Mars always considers itself, even if Mars isn't aware of it. So especially in Libra, who always considers everyone else, having Mars moving through this place, we have an opportunity to now see how we are unconsciously or have been unconsciously considering ourselves if you're a Libra rising. And that Saturn in the seventh house is going to be a great mirror for Mars because it's in Mars's domicile. And Saturn slowing things down, showing you where the limitations or the boundaries have risen in your relationships. And this is an opportunity to then begin to overcome them. Mercury, the planet of communication, in the sign of Leo in the 11th house of good fortune, of community, acquaintances, when it stations direct on August 11th, we get to begin again, moving through back through the shadow of Mercury, moving through 11th house, noticing what community has to show us in our one-on-one relationships. Maybe we're a part of a community where we talk and we converse about the different things that are arising in regards to our creativity, or our romantic experience with our spouse can begin to show us things about ourselves that we weren't necessarily aware of, because we begin to listen now. We have more clarity now that Mercury retrograde is over. So notice how you've been showing up, Libra risings, and notice what you want to change. Moving forward into Scorpio risings, who will be experiencing this full moon in Aquarius in the fourth house of foundation, of home, the connections with your family. When we think about the sign of Aquarius, sometimes Aquarius doesn't necessarily fit in. And it's important to notice what you are doing as a Scorpio rising to try to fit in, and take into consideration what feels more authentic, and begin to express yourself in this way. So that way, everybody who needs to be in your experience can be there, and you can share yourself in a way that is true to you and becomes true to the people around you that you happen to connect with. Looking at the rulership of the full moon Saturn in the sixth house, the house of daily efforts, work, and the health of the physical body, in opposition with Mars, which is moving through the 12th house. Mars is our chart ruler. So Mars moving through the 12th house in Libra is going to bring up a lot of insight in regards to how we've been connecting in relationship, and how we need to share ourselves, how we need to overcome the any ideas of choosing to people please, or choosing to not share ourselves truly for what may seem like the benefit of the other, which in turn may not be so good, may not really be beneficial. So we get an opportunity to bring clarity to our personal experiences, possibly through solitude, meditation, clarity through our personal experiences, so we can then truly share ourselves in relationship authentically. That Mercury stationing direct in the 10th house is allowing us to have direction in our communication, share ourselves publicly in a more authentic way, so we can begin to attract the community that we need to be around, the people that we need to be around, and show up better in our own relationships. Scorpio risings. Looking at Sagittarius next. Sagittarius risings are experiencing the full moon in the third house. The third house is the joy of the moon. So when we think about having the moon move through this place, the moon is right where it needs to be. The moon flourishes, moving from place to place, connecting and being able to communicate and feeling the emotions of the connection. Just like Aquarius loves to be in the mix with the community, we can think about this third house of the daily doings, the short distance travel, the people that we see on a daily basis. What do we need to do to show up more authentically in this space? When we look at the opposition between Saturn and Mars across the 11th house, fifth house axis, we begin to notice our creative expression, our place of entertainment to our communities. What do we need to slow down and look at in regards to how we're sharing ourselves creatively or even romantically through the eyes of our community? How are we seen in community? And how do we want to be seen in community to sort of cultivate a space where we can share even more than what we've already been sharing, or share even more authentically? Because that fifth house, where Aries is in, where Saturn is in Aries, is giving us a little bit of boundaries into where we can really be creative. What's been holding us back? How have we been holding ourselves back? And how can community support us in opening ourselves up more into these experiences? Mercury stationing direct And the ninth house can begin to show us how we want to share something that we've been learning. So maybe our community is supportive in this way that wants to know more. So as we connect with our relationships, our acquaintances, begin to notice what feels good and how you want to share. Moving forward to Capricorn. Capricorn risings are experiencing this full moon in the second house, skills, talents, abilities, assets, financial well-being, the things that belong to you but are not you. Looking directly to the fourth house, 10th house axis, we can begin to notice this is something that we need to sit with. Saturn creating limitations in the fourth house. We can begin to notice where our boundaries our limitations are in regards to our foundation. And focusing on career for a moment, we can notice that Mars here in this Venusian rule sign of Libra is showing us how we've been choosing to express in career and public role that may have been seemingly beneficial to the people around us, but inherently for our own personal gain. And when we are in relationship connection with others, true connection can see everything. So we begin to find awareness of ourselves in these connections and possibly become distasteful around ourselves and our own recent expressions. So as we move deeper into these connections, these relationships we are a part of via career and public role, we can choose to do what can be seen as the right thing, the that leads us more down the path of truth in our connections, where we can honestly be beneficial in career and public role, where it can then really benefit us in a more revolutionary way financially. When we look at the sign of Capricorn, who is ruled by Saturn as well, maybe it's communication with our families, or once again having the moment in solitude where we notice how we're holding our own selves back. We can step out of our own way and be beneficial to those around us, which will truly inherit and truly and inherently be beneficial to ourselves. When we take into consideration financial well-being, when we fill others' cups, our cups will naturally be filled. So maybe that's the clarity that we come across in this one is for Capricorn risings. Moving to Aquarius risings, we get to experience this full moon in the first house. It's a time of letting go of yourself, Aquarius rising, noticing what you've been doing mechanically in order to be accepted and feel connected, so we can let go of those ways of being, so we can be received genuinely, authentically. The axis of the third house and the ninth house, Saturn and Mars in opposition between our axes of learning to express ourselves, connecting on the daily basis with people, and sharing the things that we are new to. That Saturn in the third house can show us the the walls that we've been running into on a daily basis, and maybe it's time to overcome these walls and be more mindful of the things that we want to share, the communication that we want to really offer in our relationships. When we think about Mercury stationing direct in the seventh house, is going to give us the opportunity to share more naturally in our one-on-one relationships, possibly overcoming bouts of shyness and being ready to be seen for who we are, what we want to share, how we want to connect with the people around us. This opposition, once again, between Saturn and Mars is going to help us to overcome any emotional repression. And these two planets are, although they're in opposition, we can take into consideration once more the possibility of the mutual reception. It's like a secret conjunction where they're connecting and working together. So how are we bringing the things that we learn to our daily waking life to be able to overcome these walls that we've placed for ourselves, these boundaries that we've been hindering ourselves with? So take these things into consideration. Aquarius rising, how do we need to change? last but not least, Pisces rising will experience this full moon in the 12th house of the unconscious. It can also be seen as the house of self undoing because sometimes we shoot our own selves in the foot with our ways of being and our expression, especially in communication and relationship with others. Saturn moving through our second house and Aries in opposition with Mars moving through the eighth house. This can be some karmic experience that we are facing. When we look at Mars in the eighth house, it shows the esteem of others. So, how we are taking action and connection is more prevalent to our own personal awareness, what we're being seen for. That Saturn is showing boundaries, limitations in the second house. So, skills, talents, abilities. What what is our connections? What are our relationships showing us about ourselves that can bring more clarity to how we want to be of service with the things that we know, how we can begin to share ourselves in beneficial ways with our relationship connections, our communities. When Mercury stationed direct in the sixth house of consistent efforts of work, the house where we chop wood and carry water, our daily efforts to achieve particular goals. Mercury stations direct here, we can begin to gain clarity around communication, clarity around how we want to share ourselves in relationship, even with our families or our spouse. So as we begin to look at ourselves through the eyes of others, we can gain clarity. We can know what ways we want to share ourselves. And for Pisces risings, notice how this is showing up for you. That brings our horoscopes to an end. We just want to clarify one more time that when we look at this full moon in Aquarius, be mindful of the relationships that you're a part of, how you're showing up, and what do you need to notice about yourselves as you show up. Thanks for being here. My name is Casey. Once again, this is Aligned Astrology. Be sure to like the video if you like the video and subscribe. Hope to see you here again. And until the next time.